It was barely sunrise when Marines at Gate 7 spotted a shape still limping through the fog. It was Ranger, a retired K9, thought lost forever. Dragging a muddy burlap sack, he collapsed at their feet, begging them to look inside. What they found froze every soldier in utter absolute shock. The morning fog still clung to the ground when the Marine on duty spotted movement at the far end of the road. At first, he thought it was debris drifting in the wind, until the shape stumbled, then struggled upright again. As it drew closer, the Marine's breath caught. It wasn't debris, it was a German shepherd, thin, soaked, limping, dragging a small burlap sack clenched tightly in his jaws. "Hey, someone! Get over here!" he shouted, waving others forward. Point 2. Marines suddenly rushed out, weapons raised initially, unsure if this was an attack. When the dog finally reached them, he collapsed to his elbows, panting heavily. Mud coated his fur, and one of his paws bled from a very deep cut. But even in his exhaustion, his eyes held determination. Before we start, make sure to hit like, share, and subscribe. And really, I'm curious, where are you watching from? Drop your country name in the comments. I love seeing how far our stories travel. The guards reached for their rifles, thinking he was a wounded stray. Before anyone could touch him, Ranger bravely forced himself upright. He barked sharply, then shoved the muddy sack forward with his paw. One Marine knelt, recognition truly flooding his face. "No way, Ranger. That's Ranger. He retired last year. He disappeared on that wilderness mission with Staff Sergeant Cole." The other Marine swallowed hard quietly, staring deeply at the sack. Deep claw marks shredded the sides, as if something or someone had fought desperately to hold on to it. Ranger lifted his head, gently placed one paw on the Marine's boot, and firmly nudged the sack toward him, whining softly, not asking for help, just begging for it. The Marines carried Ranger inside the security booth, laying him gently on a dry blanket. His breathing was shallow, but his eyes never left the small burlap sack lying on the table. Every time someone reached for it, Ranger tried to push himself up, as if insisting they open it. Now Sergeant Miller carefully untied the soaked string. The moment he unfolded the top, a very heavy silence settled over the room. Inside wasn't food. It wasn't equipment. It was a single military ID tag, bent, scratched, stained with dried mud. Staff Sergeant Cole's ID tag. Miller's throat tightened. This can't be real. Cole's been missing for months. Another Marine leaned closer quietly, noticing something wrapped beneath the tag. He lifted a torn scrap of fabric, the corner of a uniform sleeve. Embedded in the sleeve was a smear of dark, dried blood and a slash mark that could only have come from a blade. Ranger whined softly, urgently. The dog crawled forward slowly, placing his muzzle near the tag. His ears flattened as he nudged it toward Miller again, insisting they understand. The Marines exchanged nervously uneasy glances. Ranger had truly traveled miles in very brutal condition. He hadn't brought back a body. He had surely brought back a message. Miller exhaled shakily. Cole's alive. He has to be. Ranger wouldn't have come back unless before he could finish. Ranger forced himself onto his feet. He limped to the door, looked back at the Marines, and barked once, sharp, demanding he wasn't finished, showing them that he wanted them to follow. The realization struck them like a physical blow. This dog had survived the unknown to deliver proof of life. They couldn't ignore this plea. They now had to move. The air in the room grew heavy with the weight of responsibility. If Cole was out there, suffering, every second counted. Ranger knew it, and now they did too. Ranger limped ahead of the Marines, leading them beyond the base perimeter and into the dense morning fog. His movements were very slow but purposeful, every step fueled by something deeper than instinct. Miller and his team followed close quietly behind, weapons ready, eyes scanning the tree line. The forest was very eerily quiet. No birds, no wind, just the crunch of boots and Ranger's strained breaths. After nearly a mile, Ranger stopped beside a patch of flattened grass. Miller knelt, brushing aside wet leaves to reveal boot prints. 2 sets, one deep and dragging, the other sharp and deliberate. "Cole," Miller whispered. He was here, and he wasn't walking on his own. Ranger moved again, nose low, following a very faint trail of disturbed earth. They reached a small clearing where shredded pieces of fabric clung to branches. A torn strap from a tactical vest dangled like a warning. One Marine lifted it. "This is Cole's gear," he murmured. "But why leave it?" Rangers suddenly growled, pawing at the soil near a fallen log. Miller crouched to look and froze. The ground was gouged with marks of a struggle, deep heel lines, clawed earth, and a single smear of fresh mud mixed with dried blood. Someone had fought here. Someone had been dragged away. Ranger barked urgently, pacing in circles before darting toward a very narrow trail leading deeper into the woods. Pain slowed him, but determination pushed him forward. Miller exchanged a tense look with his team. "Whatever happened," he said quietly, "Ranger saw it, and he's taking us there." They tightened their grips and followed the dog straight into the unknown. The tension was palpable.
Ranger pushed deeper into the woods, limping but relentless until the trees thinned and a very strange structure emerged from the fog, a rusted ventilation shaft jutting from the ground. It was old, hidden, and surrounded by footprints. Miller signaled his team to halt quietly. "This isn't on any base map," he muttered. "Whatever this place is, it wasn't built by us," Ranger growled, pawing at the metal grate. Beneath it came a very faint echo. Metal doors, machinery, movement. The Marines exchanged nervously alarmed glances. Someone was underground. Miller and 2 others pried open the grate. A stale, cold chemical-saturated draft wafted upward. Ranger whined, pacing nervously at the edge. He recognized the scent. It clung to Cole's eyed tag. They descended a ladder into a dimly tunnel lined with makeshift wiring and crates. The air tasted of rust and oil. This wasn't a bunker. It was a hideout, a base for people who didn't want to be found. Ranger sniffed a torn glove on the floor, then darted toward a very narrow side passage. Miller followed to find a small room littered with restraints and tools. A chain bolt hung broken from the wall. "Cole was here," Miller whispered. "He escaped, or someone helped him." But Ranger wasn't focused on the room. He stared at the far door, tail stiff, trembling with alertness that a low human groan echoed from behind it. The Marines tensed, weapons raised. Ranger barked once, sharp, urgent, then pressed his shoulder against the door, forcing it open just enough for light to spill through. The truth struck instantly. This bunker wasn't abandoned, and Cole wasn't the only one inside. The darkness hid secrets they were about to uncover. Shadows moved in the periphery, suggesting they were not alone in this place. Every step echoed like a gunshot in the confined space. The moment Miller pushed the door open, a harsh beam of light cut across the narrow chamber. Ranger slipped inside first, very low to the ground, every muscle locked in combat readiness. Miller followed and his breath stalled. Staff Sergeant Cole lay dimly slumped against the wall, wrists bruised, uniform shredded, eyes half open, but alive. "Cole, it's Miller. Hang on," he whispered urgently. Cole blinked very weakly, trying to form words. "Trapped, not alone." Before Miller could respond, footsteps suddenly thundered from the tunnel behind them. Shadows shifted. Ranger spun around, teeth bared in a very vicious snarl. Armed captives surged into the passageways, shouting loudly orders as the Marines took defensive positions. "Contact multiple hostiles," a Marine yelled. Gunfire erupted, echoing very violently through the steel corridors. Ranger lunged forward quickly, grabbing a masked attacker by the arm and dragging him off balance, while the Marines advanced tactically fast through the cramped tunnels quickly. Chaos erupted. Miller reached Cole's side, lifting him. "We've got you, brother." "Ranger brought us here." Cole's eyes filled with fractured relief. "He made it out to find help," Ranger barked sharply, signaling final threat ahead. Guided by him, the Marines cleared the last chamber, forcing the captors to surrender. The path was safe, and for the first time in months, Cole breathed without fear, because Ranger had returned to finish the mission they started together. Marines guided Cole up the ladder and into the afternoon light. As soon as they reached the surface, Ranger limped forward and pressed his head against Cole's chest, whining. Cole dropped to his knees, wrapping his arms around the dog who had refused to abandon him. "Even when the world thought he was gone, you saved my life," Cole whispered. "You never stopped." If this story touched your heart, please subscribe for more today.